At this time, I invite Jay Kaiser, our finance chair, to introduce our spotlight on stewardship.
Thanks, Patricia. It's kind of strange to be talking about money and stewardship on a Easter Sunday morning, but it's also somehow appropriate because as we look at the change we need to live into the world, part of the way we are going to work through that change is by thinking about budgeting and our financial processes a little bit differently. One of the things we're going to try and do as we set up our budget for the coming year is to go through a series of meetings that talk about how we spend our money and how we live our priorities as we set our budget and set up spending. So you'll see a series of after church meetings that are intended to be sort of informational and to also get input from the broader community as we go forward and set our 21-22 fiscal year budget. And so talking about spreadsheets and money is not the, I think, the typical after church sort of conversation. But I think we have an opportunity as a congregation to learn, to think through, and to really bring everybody's input into how we put our values into our budget. And so you'll see the chairs of our committees leading sort of informational and input sessions as we do that. And we're going to integrate these meetings, setting up our budget, while we also talk about stewardship. And part of the way we will talk about our stewardship campaign is to ask people to share what this community means to them. And I'm going to now pass to Marissa Tice to spend a little bit of time talking about what this congregation and community mean to her and to her family. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thank you. So I spent this week just reflecting on what giving has meant to me, what offering has been for me with this church. And then as a kid, like I remember being a kid sitting in the pews and the ushers would pass the basket down and my mom would give me like a few quarters. We would put some quarters in there, some change. And then I would see my dad put in this white envelope. And so when I was an adult and I attended church, like offering was always sort of this like afterthought to me. Like I would come to church and I'd like rush, scrummage through my purse, like what cash do I have? Sometimes it'd be like $10, like $20. If I hadn't been to church for a while, it's like, okay, $40, like I'm almost out of guilt for me. And over time, I started to think more about like offering in church as more of like I'm a member of this church, right? So for me, it's sort of like, what's the membership fee? Like if I had to pay to go to church every Sunday, if I had to pay for my kids to be in Sunday school, how would I value that? And what would I choose to afford, right? Because a lot of times we choose to afford things. And I thought about how if I belong to this church and this church belongs to me, that means that, I have to prioritize everybody and think about not only what benefits me, but what benefits everybody else in this body financially also. There's a lot that I get from this church and from just being loved and accepted into the body of the church and the people. And so I really have to rethink what that means. There's a million ways in which I could share what this church means to me. And obviously last time at the adoption ceremony, I could barely get through anything without crying. You know, because it really is so heavy in my heart, all the ways that I've, you know, received love and care, and you know, physically in one way, emotionally in one way, spiritually in another. Um, and so I probably less than a year ago, I started to do the financial giving electronically, and that's really been the best way for me to give, because I think of it more like I budget it with my bills. I budget it with my rent, with my gas bill. It's just something else. So um, I've really been able to prioritize my giving um, finally. And, you know, offering for me is no longer an afterthought. So I'm glad to share that. And I'm just so thankful for everybody who's made this church mean so much to me. Personally, emotionally, spiritually, and all that.
Marissa, we're thankful for you. Thank you so much for sharing.